Peter was a fisherman. We read in last Sunday's gospel lesson when Jesus was in Nazareth in his own home synagogue, that the people were amazed at what he said and said, "Is not this Joseph the carpenter's son?" Jesus is a carpenter. Jesus wants to talk to the crowds. They're pressing in on him. It's too crowded. He's going to step back in the water. So he gets into the boat, sits down, the standard way for teaching. Here I am standing. In their day and age, one did the teaching from a sitting position. He teaches them, and when he finished, doesn't say a word about what he taught them. The emphasis in this account is between Simon and Jesus and what happens in that encounter. And what happens is that Peter, the expert fisherman, said, "I'm a fisherman. I know how to fish. I know a little bit about where fish are." Worked all night. The standard way of doing it was you go out with a torch, fish are attracted to the light, and they caught nothing. "Nevertheless, at your word." So he goes out and he lets the net down for the catch, and we know the rest of the story. Too much. The nets are beginning to tear. They summon the disciples in the other boats, and they come, fill both boats almost to the point of sinking, and go back to shore. Well, and Peter says, "Not any longer did you notice a change in terms. Master, I toiled all night long, but now who is he? Depart from me, Kyrie, Lord, for I am a sinful man." Jesus has risen a whole bunch. Now he is the Lord. And when he comes to shore, he and his partners leave their boatloads of fish. That's their income. Leave their boatloads of fish and follow Jesus. Now, what does this have to do with our situation with our son? Our son's not, well, he's the fly fisherman, but he's not into this kind of net fishing and all of that. But when Peter encounters Jesus and he recognizes him as the Lord, he is seeing something far more than "this was my lucky day." Had it been just his lucky day, that, oh man, here was somebody who knew more about fishing than he did, even though he was a carpenter, that still, then, had he come to shore, what he would have done, I'm sure, would be that he and his partners would have gathered up those fish in as many baskets as they could lay hands on, and take them to market and say, "Fish for sale," and we would be off and running to having a nice income, and we wouldn't have to work so hard. And when you have those nights when you toil all night and nothing is taken, then you would be all right because you have a bit of a cushion. In our situation with our son, Peter has, let me just back up for a second. Peter has no control over where the fish will be. As a fisherman, he thinks he knows. He has gotten familiar with the lake, knows where to go and what to do. Didn't work last night. He's at the mercy of what happens to happen. When we deal with our lives, we are at the mercy of what happens. The people in Haiti were not saying, "Oh, I hope that we don't have an earthquake." It may have been. They didn't have any choice. When someone deals with a cancer, we don't have a choice. And for all of what we might wish, we can't make the doctors do the tests any faster or pick better kinds of choices or make it go away. So what do we do when we are trapped by the situation that we live in? Peter becomes painfully aware of his situation when he looks around and he sees the quantity of fish by a non-expert, and he knows that what he's dealing with is not someone who just knows how to fish better than he does. He's talking about the God who controls heaven and earth. When we deal with life, with all of its variations, with its anxieties and pains, and we have no control, it would be possible for us to simply curse the darkness. Peter could have said, yes, it's not worth fishing anymore. I'm going to go get a real job. What if there weren't any? What if it was economic bad times the way it is now and you can't find another job? Worse luck yet. Nor do we want to say, as I mentioned in my newsletter article for this month, this was the will of God. God is the Almighty, He's the one in charge, so whatever happens belongs to God. No. A defiant no. As I mentioned in my newsletter article, I've done a word study on the phrase, will of God. It's never used for what's happening. It's never used about death. It's never used about sickness. It's not even used, sometimes we say that the will of God is revealed to us in His law. Never gets used that way, at least not in the New Testament. It is used, as Luther says in his explanation to the petition in the Lord's Prayer, your will be done. God's good and gracious will. God's good and gracious will is done indeed, even without our prayer, but we pray in this petition that it may be done among us. That God's will is demonstrated in those passages, in the Lord's Prayer. Your kingdom come. That's a good thing. It gets paired with your will be done. That's a good thing. God's will is a good thing. God, in other places, it says desires, and it's the word for will there, desires not the death of the sinner, but that the sinner turn from his way and live. God's will is done then not when you get sick, not when there is cancer in our lives. Imagine the picture that would convey of God. We have God sitting in heaven saying, I think there ought to be an earthquake in Haiti that ought to do a lot of damage, and let's see, over here we should have a train wreck, and somebody needs a heart attack, and somebody needs... What kind of God is that? If that's our picture of God, that He is willing those kinds of things, then surely all of us would have to do some severe ducking and nothing is going to work. I can't go outside because maybe some rock is going to fall on my head, or if I go outside, maybe some car will come careening down the street, or maybe one of those idiots who periodically in our country runs around with a gun and decides to start shooting people, even in a McDonald's. And I was there at the wrong time. If God is willing that, then there is no place for safety anywhere. If I stay in here and say, in case of an earthquake, I'm going to crawl under the pew, then what if the whole building comes down? There is no security. But if we know God as one who wills our salvation, who wills our life, then we have an entirely different picture of God. Peter runs into that God. You didn't catch anything? Let me show you how God is concerned about that, and gives him 2 boatloads of fish.